completely...
You have no right. You have no right. As IDF, Israel doesn't have a right to exist, let alone to defend itself. The Jews, however, have a right to live in Jerusalem. This is my belief as a Muslim.
That's fine.
The Jews have a right to live there and a protected status there.
You can disagree
But
with me.
they don't have. Israel doesn't have a right to exist, let alone a right to defend itself. That's like someone asking me, does ISIS have a right to defend itself? It's not a state. It's not a legitimate state for it to do so. No. It's not a state where it's not a state that has a right.
That's fine. It's your opinion.
That's fine. When you enter a land and you hold the positions that you have as a rabbinic Torah observant Jew, and you live side by side with people believing that you can take their wealth.
I mean, there's something you keep pretending. You talk about rabbinic. Israel is a secular country.
No. Do I have the right to Aliyah?
No.
Why?
Why yes?
Why?
Why yes?
Okay, why don't I?
Why
don't I?
Right to what?
Huh? Aliyah, to return back to Israel.
What, do I have the right to become a French citizen?
I don't know. Are you French?
No.
Okay, so why don't I have the right? What is the right dependent on in Jerusalem, in Israel?
The automatic right is if you're Jewish.
If you're Jewish. And how do you find Jew?
Well, it is a secular country that has adopted some Jewish practices. For example,
how are you defined in Jew?
They define Jew according to rabbinical law.
Rabbinic law?
Hang on. It's a secular country, but for their status quo, for their base laws, they've accepted a few Jewish ideas, really.
The right to be a citizen in Israel is dependent on you being Jewish. Hang on. The automatic right. That's fine. Automatic right.
You can become a citizen.
No, fair enough. The definition of a Jew. Okay, you have two claims, a historical claim and a religious claim. The definition of becoming a Jew, all of the historic claims go back to a religious claim. What is a Jew? Where did you get the definition of a Jew? It's from the Torah, from the Tanakh. It's religious.
But it's still a secular country.
So you're using secular when it suits you, but you're based on religious definitions.
It's a completely secular country.
People like Ben Shapiro have mentioned this. We are religious Jews using secular arguments for secular people.
No,
so listen.
Israel is a complete secular country. It was founded by secular people.
Based upon religious definitions.
No.
Yes. Religious definitions. The right to return is based upon a religious definition. A Jewish state, what is Jewish is only based upon religious definitions. So this discussion, this is why I differ with my people when they argue with Jews. This is not a political discussion. This is not a discussion on secularism or this country or that country. It's a religious discussion.
No, it's not.
It's a religious discussion.
It's a secular country founded on secular ideas.
Using religious definitions and religious premises.
They had to use some kind of definition. And there was a lot of argument, debate at its inception. For example, when the day of rest is going to be, what the symbols should be, what should define a Jew, etc. The various things that were...
And what did they look to?
Well, they looked for a lot of them. They looked to
where did they look to? Where did they look to?
They looked to history, to precedent, to the many Jews who came there, and after lots of back and forth, it was decided that these kind of ideas, who is a Jew, day of rest, and some other things are going to be decided by what the religious law. The religious law. However, these are just these things that were set at the time as the definition of a Jew. At the time, in the secular country, but it's still a secular country, secular ideas, secular government, and Tel Aviv is a completely secularist town. But they don't apply Jewish law in any way, shape, or form.
How are the Jewish people that wanted to make Israel? Okay, what held them together? What bound them? Was it their DNA?
No, what bound them was shared history.
Shared history of where?
Of the Jewish people.
And how is that defined?
The Jewish,
as a Jew, is defined by the Bible.
The Jewish people are both a tribe, an ethnic group,
and a religion. Yes.
So you can join Judaism, you can join the Jewish people, but you're also automatically Jewish. Now the Jews, having been persecuted in exile in the diaspora for many, many centuries, they were a distinct tribe, a distinct ethnic group. So even though...
Based upon what though?
Well, actually at that point, for the vast majority of the founders of Israel, just based on their ethnicity, just based on their tribe.
Well, how was the tribe defined?
No, they were defined by the non-Jews. They're defined as belonging, as having been born from this group. They weren't Jew. They're not religious.
How would they define themselves? How would they define themselves?
The parents were religious.
I know.
Yet
But they used religious definitions.
No, they used
religious
They
definitions.
used the definitions that all the other nations used.
Someone put it really
Germany
good.
said you were born even from a Jewish father, which is not in the Torah. Nazi Germany used birth. And this is how they were seen by all the other nations.
Was it
so
like a grandfather or something? Like you could have one grandfather and you would.
That was in Nazi Germany, but that is not under Jewish law.
But no, but in
so they were seen as Jews by all the other people. So therefore they saw themselves as Jews.
But how did they define themselves?
Again, they defined themselves as Jews because they were
based
seen as
upon
Jews
religion.
like everyone else. No.
No. Don't try and tell me that.
I am trying to tell you.
No.
You don't want to listen, that's fine.
That's fine.
Choice.
I'm not listening to that. No.
Great,
I'm telling you now that the definition of a Jew was coming from the mother, okay, was based upon religious law. This is how you know who's a rabbi, who's a Levite, and who's not. Okay.
Levites from the father.
Okay, but you know who the tribes are. The tribes are
from the father.
Okay, but the Jewishness is from the mother.
Yes.
Exactly. But you know your tribes, you know your Jewishness. Hang on. You know this
Tell me
from.
why Israel
Hang on.
is
You
not
know
a secular
this.
state
You know
that's
this.
founded on secular principles. Go back to that.
You know this from the religious texts.
What's your point?
My point is that this is a religious discussion.
Are you saying Israel is a religious state founded on religious laws?
No, I'm not saying
on religious principles.
I'm saying that there are religious principles underpinning it. Yes, absolutely. When we see Netanyahu himself taking lessons and advice from the Lubavitcher as his main guide before he was in the UN, we know that this is a religious motivation. This is religious motivation. When he quotes Amalek, which is found in the Bible, knowing the 613 laws. One of them is
when he quotes a biblical
hang on.
verse, that means that Israel is founded on
I never said that.
Laws.
I never said that.
I
said it's underpinning it. I said it's underpinning it.
Not underpinning it.
I'm saying it's underpinning
guided by it.
I'm saying it's underpinning it.
Israel is not guided by religious laws in any shape or form.
Listen, you admitted earlier that it is secular. When it's secular, but has a religious. They use religious definitions.
There's some religious flavour. There's historical Jewish flavour, and there's more about history.
No, but this is what underpins it.
No, it doesn't.
It is, and I'm explaining why.
Nonsense. I mean, it's like saying that Christian values underpin the British values, but Britain is a secular country.
Why that land? Why Israel had that land when they've been offered Uganda and they've been offered.
Why that land?
Yeah, why that land?
Because it was a Jewish homeland for 1300 years, a Jewish kingdom.
Where does it say that?
We had it. History says
it. And when you go back to the history is self-defined by religious texts. Hang on. That's fine. But we know now that when they've done DNA studies, the Palestinian Arab Muslim shares more in common with the Mizrahi Jew than the Ashkenazi Jew. How is it?
I don't think that's true.
This is DNA studies. Maybe you don't like DNA studies, but that's not our problem.
The Ashkenazi Jews are their closest relative is the Sicilians.
Anyway,
so we know that there were 12 tribes. There were lost tribes. Those lost tribes, they became enveloped into the surrounding tribes there. They never left. They're still there. They're the descendants. If you do the DNA of a Palestinian, he's going to have some Sephardic or some Mizrahi or some Yemenite. They're going to have...
The question is complex, and yes, it's a mix of religion and race.
So why that land? Why that land?
That land is because it's a Jewish homeland.
And it's nothing to do with... Was it promised to the Jews?
It's got nothing to do with being promised to
Jews. It's got nothing to do with being promised.
If you look in the Declaration of Independence, it says very clearly, because this is where our whole identity was shaped.
When?
About 1900 years ago.
1900 years ago.
Our identity was shaped. We had a kingdom spanning 1300 years. That is a long time.
So do you believe that people
our identity was shaped. Now this was a secular declaration. That God isn't mentioned at all. And in fact, what is mentioned is we call upon the Arabs to stay here on the basis of equal citizenship, because they did not want to exile any Arabs. It's only the ones who wage war. They lost their homes.
Do you believe now that
people? A secular country.
Do you believe now that people who have maintained their identity for over 1,900 years, but have come from a different place, do you believe they have a right to that original place? For example, the Irish. The Irish, they're said to be Celts that originated from Anatolia and Turkey. Do you believe the Irish have a right to return and right to claim the land in Turkey?
Is Turkey a sovereign country nowadays?
Turkey is, yeah.
Okay, good.
It wasn't a cultural
Was
thing,
was
it was
is
genetic.
was
Huh?
It wasn't cultural, it was genetic.
Yeah, but
hang on, was Israel?
why
was
does it have to
Israel-
be
was-
cultural?
hang on, was
Why does it
Israel
have to be?
sovereign?
Because that's what the whole point of the
What,
Declaration of Independence
also, hang on.
How? If the Irish, if the
No,
yeah,
I'll tell you.
if the
Was
Irish,
Israel sovereign at the
their
time?
Celtic origin, the Celts are said to come from Anatolia.
Celtic is not one group though. It's a
No,
load
that's
of
fine. That's fine.
different
Was
But they're said
Israel-
to migrate through Europe, from Anatolia. Do they have a right to go back to Anatolia?
It's not just Anatolia. It was actually also north. through
Forget the semantics of it. Do they have a right to go back to
Well, no,
Anatolia?
that matters if
Is
they're going
Turkey-
not
is
in Anatolia,
Turkey
that
sovereign?
matters.
If
It's
do
not
they
Anatolia,
have
it matters.
okay Anatolia and everywhere else on the way?
Is Turkey sovereign?
Well, again, it's not their culture, so no, I would say no.
Is
Turkey sovereign?
Is Istanbul sovereign?
Is Turkey
Is
sovereign?
Istanbul and no, sorry, is Bodrum sovereign?
No idea what that is.
Bodrum is one section, one area of Turkey.
Does it belong to Turkey?
It belongs to Turkey.
Okay, is Turkey sovereign country?
Turkey sovereign.
Great. Palestine
Yeah.
wasn't.
Palestine.
The British mandate to Palestine, to give it its full name,
Yeah.
was an administered area by the British mandate, and before that it was a colony, a Turkish colony, and before that was a colony of other countries, all the way back to the Roman colony, because it was always a colony ever since the Romans expelled the Jews. It was always a colony, never sovereign, because Israel, the land of Israel, the Holy Land, never gave itself away to become sovereign for anyone else. It was always an administered colony.
Where do you see?
It was waiting for
Where
its
do you
people
get this
to come
idea
back.
that Israel never gave away?
It was never sovereign.
Where-
You look
no,
all the way
Israel,
back to
Israel,
history.
Israel,
You
Israel.
look all the way back to history. Ever since the Jews were expelled, it was waiting for its people to come back. It never became sovereign.
What?
Show me one
Hang
time
on.
in history when it was sovereign.
So it was
always a
so
colony.
so the Romans, when they had
It was a colony, a Roman colony.
so the Romans controlled Israel.
Yes.
Okay.
That was a Roman colony.
Okay.
It never became sovereign. No other nation ever made its place there. It was always a colony of someone else.
That's not true.
Yes.
The Kingdom of Jerusalem during the Crusades. That was an independent state.
Really?
Yeah. The Kingdom of
That wasn't that the Crusades.
Yeah, but it was an
The
independent.
Vatican, a colony
No,
of the
but
Vatican.
it wasn't a colony. It was an independent state. All right, it was ruled by foreigners, but
It was a papal colony.
So why do you believe the Jews were expelled from Jerusalem by the Romans?
Personally, as a religious Jew,
Yeah, as a religious Jew.
because God wanted to expel us.
Why? If God wanted you in that land, why did He expel you? What have you done? What did you do?
Between us and God.
What do you mean? That's between you and God.
It's,
You're expelling people from their land and taking their land back. Yes, you are.
No, we're not.
Yes, you are. Huh? Israel as a state that you're defending.
spelling who?
The Palestinians that were.
Palestinians?
What do you mean? No. Don't do this.
I am
It's
doing
happening.
this.
It's happening. There's
Who?
no. Listen.
Who?
What's known doesn't need to be said.
Who?
What's known doesn't need to be
Which
said.
Palestinians are being
What's
expelled?
known doesn't need to be said. I'm not even entertaining your semantics. You're doing a lawyer stuff now.
No, I'm not.
What I'm saying to you
Because
is
that
what-
is- because that is where your argument falls.
So no, there's no fool.
It does.
Why were you expelled from Jerusalem?
It's irrelevant.
Why?
It was God's way.
What was it?
It's irrelevant.
Previously, when you were expelled from Jerusalem, what had happened? Was there some sin?
It's irrelevant.
Was there some sin?
Of course there were sins.
It's irrelevant because this is where the crux of the matter is.
Not really.
The land that was given to the Jews was under the condition that you serve God alone, and you submit to Him, and you do not sacrifice your children, you do not sacrifice the false deities, and you put God first. What happened? The rabbis came. The Jewish people, they committed child sacrifice. Every time a prophet would come to them and say, "Stay away from child sacrifice," they killed the prophets. Okay, like Amos, like Isaiah, like I can't remember. There's a few other ones as well. Every prophet that came and told you stop doing child sacrifice, you killed. And I will go on record and say and demonstrate that if needed.
Whether history is correct or not is irrelevant.
That's the reality. Then what happened? You began to take your rabbis as lords. You have in your Talmud the Tandur of Akhnai. You know what I'm referring to.
Tanur.
The Tandur of Akhnai, where the rabbis said one thing and one rabbi alone said something else, and the bat call, the voice of heaven came down and said the truth is with that rabbi. The rabbis here said it is not in heaven, it is with us.
Yes.
So you believe that the rabbis have the authority to legislate law, and that God has no say in the matter. So if now,
No, God
hang
wills
on.
that.
So if
That is
God,
God's will.
if God now said to you, if God now revealed to a prophet somewhere and said, "I am the prophet of God," He gave you signs and miracles and wonders and all the evidences He needed to demonstrate that He is a true prophet of God, and that prophet said to you that this is the law from God, and it contradicted the belief of the rabbis, who would you follow? We know, but I just want you to say.
It was absolutely, if a prophet went against the Jewish law, which and by that
rabbinic law,
by that includes
rabbinic law, yeah.
that in itself is proof that he's not a prophet.
Okay, and then when I asked you earlier,
proves he's not a prophet.
okay, and when I asked you earlier, what is the proof that the rabbis have the authority? What is your proof of your Talmud going back to Moses? Then you it's irrelevant. So this is the issue.
It's not relevant to you.
It is relevant to me.
Not really.
It is relevant to me.
Why? Do you want to become Jewish?
No. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's relevant. Because when you claim something that is true as God would want it, you need to have proof. In your scripture, it says,
I'm pretty sure
hang on.
that Israel is not claiming ownership.
I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about, remember,
I'm talking about me personally.
as a religious Jew.
I don't need to defend Judaism to you.
You don't need to defend it, because if you did defend it, you would have no leg to stand on.
I do, but I don't.
No, you have no leg to
just
stand
an
on.
assertion.
I know it. Don't tell me it's an assertion, because you don't know what. That's
Look,
not.
you believe whatever you want.
You might have evidence.
No, that's
but until
fine.
you
That's
present it,
fine.
that's an assertion.
I've looked at the evidence. The main evidence is for the belief that the Talmud and the Torah, the oral law, the halakha is from God. And it comes down to a few chains of transmission that they have. One of them is called the Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers that they have. Who wrote the ethics of the fathers?
I don't know.
You don't know? I'm sure he doesn't know. That's fine. I'm not saying you're Jewish, but I'm saying no one knows who wrote it. Okay? So now we have.
We all know.
Who wrote it? Who wrote it? I dare you to say who wrote it.
No, I'm not interested.
Educate me. Educate me.
I'm not interested.
There you go. There's nobody knows who wrote
we
this.
all know.
Nobody who
we
wrote.
all know. It's very clear. What are you talking about?
Ethics of the Fathers.
Ethics of the Fathers is
was
just
written by who?
Ethics of the Fathers is one tractate
of
the Mishnah.
Written by who?
The entire Mishnah was compiled by Rabbi Yehuda Nussi, the Rabbi Judah, the
Hanasai. Judah Hanasai?
Yes, it was compiled by him.
Okay.
It was the teaching of the rabbis. Probably roughly half of the Mishnahs have the names of the rabbis. The rest of them were, almost all of them, written by Reb Meir. We all know it's not a big secret.
Reb Meir. Okay.
We all know who wrote them.
So when
who wrote, who compiled it. No,
you don't know. When is the earliest copy of the Talmud then?
I have no idea. What, extant copies?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Talmud doesn't mean oral tradition.
13th century.
So,
11th century. I think it's Leningrad Codex, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, so that's after Islam.
It's oral tradition though. So all the oral tradition came before.
No, but the oral tradition was meant to be written down before Islam.
Well, again, just because we have the earliest copy we have it from there doesn't mean that's the earliest
I'm not
copy that we
debating.
No, but if you want to
religion.
establish that it's correct, you need to. It's a way to substantiate it.
So
if you can't do it through manuscript
establish
tradition,
why?
Because you're saying God is pleased with the rabbis legislating their law, and God is pleased. Yeah, when it says, for example, smash the baby's head against the rock. If I'm a rabbinic Jew,
Are you?
If I'm a rabbinic Jew and I'm going to smash a baby's head against the law, I want to know that that's from God.
Does that say in the Torah?
Smash the baby's head against the rock
Does
and
that
do not
say
feel
in the
mercy
Torah?
for them.
It says in Psalms.
In Psalms, yeah.
Yes. So that's not the rabbis.
Tanakh. No.
Yes.
I'm talking about all of
That's
the.
not the
Hang on. I'm talking about all of the law. I'm including the oral and the written.
Are you an Orthodox Jew?
No.
So why does it matter to you?
I'll tell you why. Because when I see somebody about to smash the head of a baby against a rock, okay,
You can stop him.
And they tell me that we have religious
When you see someone about to smash the other baby, you can stop him.
Okay.
Now, what's
I'm seeing it happen in Gaza and I'm stopping them. That's what I'm doing now.
Now?
Okay.
You're talking to me.
Yeah, okay. Now you're the one that's justifying Israel's actions in
but hang
Gaza.
on. Are you stopping them?
I'm mentioning what I'm saying.
Okay, great.
Yeah, okay. So when I see somebody about to smash a baby's head against a rock, believing he has religious justification
No,
from
God's got
God.
nothing to do
Hang
with
on.
religious
If I'm a hypothetical situation, we can't think of any situation where we see people doing it in the name of.
we go
Hang
in
on,
circles.
you're cutting me now. You can't see any situation where we can
Because you're
see.
repeating the same nonsense.
Because you're not letting me finish. You're not letting me finish.
Because
You don't like this subject. That's what
No,
it is.
I don't care about
so
the
let me just
subject.
finish
I
the point.
can't bother to argue
My
with
point
you.
is, that's fine. I'm stupid to you because
No,
I'm a
you're
goy.
saying stupid
Because I'm a
arguments.
goy or what?
No,
Hear the
it's just
subject
because of
then.
you. It's
That's fine. Hear the subject then. Absolutely. So when I'm seeing a person smash the head of a baby against a rock and he believes he has religious justification from him, and I ask him for where's your chain of transmission, for how do you know that this is from God? How do you know this is from David? Or how do you know that's from Moses? And he tells me, we have a chain of transmission in the Talmud. This was just passed down from our rabbis. That's what I'm picking up. That's what I want to show. Hang on. The rabbis entered something. You mentioned Rabbi Meir earlier. There's a narration that mentions anything that has no source attributed to Rabbi Meir. Anything that has no source, if you want it to stick, attribute it to Rabbi Meir. So when you said, yeah, we know Rabbi Hanasai, he's the one who compiled this, and we know Rabbi Meir, he's the one of the main. Why Rabbi Meir? You mentioned Rabbi Meir. Why? Because any statement that you find is from the Stamaim. You know the Stamaim? The people, the unknown statements. Anything that is unknown, attributed to Rabbi Meir. This is a famous thing with Islam now. Anything from any prophet, whether it's Moses, whether it's Jesus, whether it's David, there must, or Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there must be a chain of transmission. So this is what I'm.
There's no chain of Islam doesn't have a chain of transmission.
We absolutely have a chain of transmission.
Back to Muhammad.
That's why you had to learn from us.
That's
why you had to learn from us.
It all comes back to Muhammad.
Chain of transmission to the
Muhammad.
Prophet. Yes.
And if Muhammad wasn't telling the truth, you forget lying. Let's say he was mistaken, then it all comes back to one mistaken person, and that's the problem with chain transmission to one person. Our chain of transmission goes back to my father's 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 father, my friend's father's 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 father,
you know why
and all of our people's father's father's father's.
You know why it's so wrong what you're saying? Because your chain of transmission, the chain of transmission that you have, the chain of transmission that you have goes to one person.
No.
It goes back to Moses, to Joshua. It does the same thing. It's the same thing. That's why you have. That's why you have the Zigot.
Mount Sinai.
Hang on. That's why in your chain of transmission, in Pirkei Avot, you have the Zujot, the pairs. You have Shimon the righteous, and you have another one. You have Rabbi Ben Hay and Rabbi Ben Hagag. You have these two people. So you have two people in the chain that we don't know nothing about, and you're saying all these people at Mount Sinai. No, you don't have all these people's transmissions at Mount Sinai.
Your point is that you believe Islam?
Your point is that it's not about that. I'm critiquing you. Exactly what Allah mentions in the Quran. You've taken the rabbis and monks as priests and lords besides Allah.
So you believe
So
Islam?
you believe that if God was to say something now, and your rabbis were to say something else, just say it on camera, you would follow the rabbis. Just say it as they did in the Tandoor of Akhnai. No, you believe in the Talmud.
I can say my own statements. I don't need
that's fine.
Yeah.
The Tandoor of Akhnai, where the rabbi said one thing and the other rabbi was alone, but the voice of God said we're going to support him, and they said it is with us, not with them. We don't care about the bat call. And what did Elijah, allegedly, the prophet Elijah met a rabbi later on, and what did he say? He was asked of Elijah, what did the Holy One, what did God say when that debate happened? And what did God say? Let you tell the people.
God is smiling and says, my sons have won me in debate.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Something to that.
Allahu Akbar.
I don't know if I have the
That's
exact
fine.
translation.
So,
yes.
so your children, my children have defeated me.
Yes.
So your God, our God, the one who created all of us,
yes,
and knows everything, knows the past, knows the future, knows what would have been and what has been, he was defeated in a debate by the rabbis.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah? So this is where we end it. Lakum dinakum waliyadin. You have no chain of transmission from Moses. You follow your rabbis. And just remember, the promise of Allah, it's not your strength as Jews. It's not your strength. It was our weakness. The moment the Muslims come back to Tawheed en masse, you will see that we'll be able to stand and you won't be able to take our lands from us and you won't be able to kill us. And just to mention now, before anyone claims I'm anti-Semitic, our mother, al-Mu'mineen Safiya, was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. She was of Jewish origin. When some of the other wives of Arab descent, they mocked her for being Jewish, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, returned to her and said, tell them that she was a descendant she was a Levite, descendant of a daughter of a Levite. She said, tell them that your father was a prophet, meaning Harun. Your uncle was a prophet, meaning Musa. And your husband is a prophet, meaning Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So what we say is that the Jewish people that follow what Moses was upon and follow what Harun were upon, these are people that are beloved to us, and it is nothing to do with hating them for ethnicity or loving them for ethnicity. Akramakum andallah al-atqakum. The best of you in the sight of Allah are the pious, not the ones from any state or any religion or anything like that. So lakum dinakum waliyadin. But just know that the promise of Allah will come to pass, and it is our weakness, not due to your strength. Allahu Akbar. God is Jewish, and he's defeated by the Jews. And he's defeated by the Jews. And your rabbis beat God. This will be your own undoing. Lakum dinakum waliyadin. لعنة الله على الكفار. Whose is this? Whose is this? Whose is this? Who's the cameras?
There's one more.